My name's Claire, and I'm 37, living in the center of Charlotte, North Carolina, where the streets buzz with ambition and possibility. I share a sleek, company-provided condo with my husband, Ethan, in a high-rise overlooking the skyline. We both work for Turner Developments, a powerhouse founded by my father-in-law that generates billions a year, building everything from skyscrapers to suburban neighborhoods across the Southeast. I never pictured myself here, running boardrooms and dissecting spreadsheets for a construction empire, but life rarely goes the way you plan. Growing up, I watched my single mom juggle 2 jobs, waiting tables by day, cleaning offices at night, just to keep us afloat in a tiny apartment in Raleigh. She taught me grit, speed in decision-making, and to never back away from a challenge. That toughness carried me through college and landed me in a banking job, where I learned to treat budgets and investments like a chessboard. I loved the thrill, how numbers told stories if you knew how to read them. But when I met Ethan, I thought my path might bend towards something gentler, maybe a quiet home life, raising children. That vision didn't last. Ethan is my opposite in so many ways. He's charming, easygoing, the kind of man people instantly like, but beneath that charm is fragility. Raised in privilege, cushioned by a trust fund, he never had to claw his way forward. His father grew Turner Developments from a modest firm into a juggernaut, buying out rivals and earning a reputation for his sharp, relentless drive. Ethan was expected to follow in his footsteps, groomed for leadership, but he's never had the appetite for it. One evening, while sprawled on our couch watching some throwaway reality show, he admitted it outright. "I'm not cut out to be CEO, Claire," he said, sounding almost relieved. "I'd just be a figurehead. It's easier that way." I remember staring at him, my stomach heavy, wondering how someone could accept drifting through life so easily. Me? I was wired differently. Choices came naturally. I trusted my gut, weighed risks, and moved fast. My mom always said I was born with a calculator in one hand and a plan in the other. When I married Ethan, I intended to quit banking and focus on us, maybe start a family. But my father-in-law had other plans. Not long after the wedding, he summoned me into his office, a wood-paneled room lined with blueprints and awards. "Claire," he said, his eyes sharp despite his age. "This company needs someone like you. You've got the numbers, and the backbone to match. Work with us." I hesitated, picturing the simple life I'd imagined. But the challenge in his voice hooked me. I agreed, and that decision shifted everything. At first, I was just another employee, learning about contracts, budgets, and labor costs. But my father-in-law quickly pulled me into board meetings, asking my take on strategies. The board, a cluster of gray-haired men accustomed to running the show, looked at me skeptically, as though I were an outsider intruding on their circle. But I didn't shrink. Years in banking had sharpened me. I knew how to spot risks and find leverage. I spoke up, offering solutions to cut costs and negotiate smarter deals. Slowly, their skepticism turned into respect. They began turning to me for insight, sometimes even deferring to me on major calls. Ethan, however, was absent. A board member in name only, he skipped meetings, brushing them off as too technical or unimportant. The board didn't mind, his father's name excused him. One night, I returned home after a grueling strategy session, only to find Ethan flipping through channels on the couch. "Why didn't you show up today?" I demanded, dropping my bag. "You're supposed to be part of this." Without even looking up, he said casually, "You've got it covered, Claire. They listen to you, not me." I stood frozen, frustration burning, realizing how little he cared, about the company, or us. That moment clung to me. I threw myself into work, determined to prove I belonged, not just as the founder's daughter-in-law, but as someone who could truly lead. My father-in-law became my mentor, teaching me how to read a room, when to push, when to step back. I thrived on it, the energy of turning ideas into progress. But the more I climbed, the more Ethan slipped away. Work became my anchor, the place where I felt most in control. By the time my father-in-law retired, I was at the helm of major decisions. The board leaned on me for acquisitions, disputes, marketing, everything. I entered meetings with notes and a plan, my instincts sharp, the numbers on my side. Profits rose, growth accelerated, and for the first time in my life, I felt I was exactly where I belonged. I'd watched my mom scrape by for years, and now I was leading a company that gave livelihoods to thousands of families. That responsibility kept me awake at night, sketching strategies in the dark. Ethan, meanwhile, drifted like a ghost. He appeared at the office sometimes, polished and smiling, but by midday he was gone. I'd come home to find him gaming or napping, treating the company his father built like a side hobby. "Ethan, this is your legacy," I'd press, my voice sharp with frustration. "Don't you want to be part of it?" He'd just shrug, that same maddening shrug, and mutter, "You're doing fine without me." It cut deep, not just because Ethan was stepping back, but because it felt like he was stepping back from us too. Our conversations shrank to surface-level chatter, weather, groceries, meaningless updates. Nothing real. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling of our condo, wondering when we drifted so far apart. Then my stepsister, Camila, swept into our lives like a hurricane. She's 3 years older than me, all charm and sharp edges. We'd grown up under the same roof after my mom married her father, a gruff man who didn't stay long. Camila learned early to talk her way through life, always chasing flashier things, designer clothes, wealthy boyfriends, a lifestyle that screamed status. Her marriage to a high-powered attorney blew up in scandal when she cheated, leaving her ex furious and humiliated. I was buried in work at the time, so Ethan went to calm him down. Ethan was good at that, soothing, smoothing things over with his calm presence. Afterward, Camila called me gushing. "Your husband's incredible, Claire. He handled that like a pro." I shrugged it off, too consumed with contracts and spreadsheets to care. But Camila clearly noticed something more. To her, Ethan wasn't just my easygoing husband, he was the heir to Turner Developments, her golden ticket. She didn't realize he barely had a role there, his executive title more courtesy than substance. But Camila's always been drawn to money. Her ex's big salary hadn't kept her loyal, but it was the reason she married him. Now, divorced and stuck with alimony payments, she was prowling again. I never saw it coming. I was too distracted by growth targets and board meetings to notice how she started lingering around Ethan, laughing too hard at his jokes, texting him about catching up. One evening, I came home exhausted from hammering out a major contract, only to find Ethan waiting in the living room, his easy grin replaced with something heavy. "Claire. We need to talk," he said, eyes on the floor. My stomach sank. Ethan never sounded serious. I sat, bracing. "Camila's pregnant," he finally said. "It's mine. I want a divorce." The word slammed into me. Pregnant? Divorce? My mind spun. Camila, my stepsister, always chasing what wasn't hers. Ethan, my husband, too spineless to commit to anything, now entangled with her. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. Instead, I managed, "When's she coming to talk about this?" He muttered something about her stopping by on my next day off. I nodded, numb. The days after his confession were a haze. I went through the motions at work. Meetings, approvals, strategy calls, but his words echoed in my head. Camila's pregnant. I want a divorce. It wasn't just the betrayal that burned. It was the absurdity. Camila thought she'd hooked some powerful CEO, while Ethan lacked even the drive to hold a title. And I? I'd been blind, letting work distract me from the unraveling of my marriage. But I knew one thing, I couldn't lose my role at Turner Developments. Without Ethan, I'd just be another ex-in-law. I couldn't let that happen. The next morning, I drove to my in-laws' sprawling estate outside Charlotte, my nerves tight. My father-in-law sat in his study, walls covered in old photos and blueprints. I laid everything out: Ethan's affair, Camilla's pregnancy, the looming divorce. My mother-in-law gasped, her eyes lighting briefly at the mention of a grandchild, but one sharp look from her husband silenced her. He leaned back, unreadable, then smiled faintly. "Claire, you are the heartbeat of this company," he said. "I don't care what Ethan does. You keep running things. I'll handle him." Relief flooded me, though sadness flickered too. His faith in me came at the expense of his own son. Still, it meant I could hold on to my purpose. On my day off, Camilla arrived at the condo, smug as ever, her designer bag swinging like a prize. "Claire," she cooed, her tone dripping with false pity. "I'm so sorry you couldn't have children. But don't worry, I'll make sure you get plenty of money to start over. Just move out of here." She gestured around the condo like she already owned it. Ethan sat silent beside her, blank as ever. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Camilla thought she'd won herself a billionaire lifestyle, but she had no idea how little Ethan actually had. I steadied myself, drawing on the same composure I used in boardrooms. "Divorce is fine," I said evenly, "but we'll need lawyers to settle property and alimony. And Camilla, do you really think Ethan is the prize you've been chasing?" Her eyes narrowed, but she waved it off with bravado. "I know it's real, Claire. Ethan's got everything I need." I nearly smirked. She had no clue the condo was company-owned, or that Ethan's salary barely covered basics. Still, I let her revel in her arrogance, already mapping out my strategy. This wasn't just about a broken marriage, it was about defending what I'd built. And I wasn't going to let either of them strip it away. The very next day, the divorce negotiations began. I had retained a sharp lawyer, Mia, who'd handled corporate battles and knew how to keep things fair but firm. We met in a glass-walled conference room at Turner Developments, the Charlotte skyline gleaming outside. Camilla strutted in like she already owned the place, while Ethan slouched next to her, wearing his usual mask of indifference. I sat across from them, Mia at my side, my heart steady even as it pounded. I'd spent years outmaneuvering rivals in boardrooms, this was just another negotiation. Camilla leaned back confidently, flipping her hair. "Claire, name your price for alimony. I'll make sure you're comfortable," she said, her tone dripping with superiority, as if she were being generous. Mia simply arched an eyebrow and slid a document across the table. "Since you brought it up, we'll actually be seeking alimony from both Ethan and you, Camilla," she replied coolly. Camilla's jaw fell open. "Me? I'm already paying my ex." She sputtered. I leaned back, watching her confidence unravel. She hadn't thought through the chaos she'd created. My mom's voice echoed in my mind, "People who chase shortcuts always stumble." Camilla was stumbling hard. Then came property division. Trying to recover, she said sharply, "This condo's Ethan's family's, right? So it's off the table." Mia didn't miss a beat. "The condo and the land it sits on belong to Turner Developments. The company decides who lives there." Ethan blinked in confusion. "Wait, I thought it was Dad's," he muttered. Camilla's face drained of color. "So we can't live here?" she demanded. "You can," Mia said crisply, "if the acting CEO approves." She glanced at me. Camilla's eyes widened. "Hold on, Ethan, you're not the CEO?" she asked, her voice rising. I stepped in calmly. "No, Camilla. I'm the acting CEO. Ethan is an advisor with no executive power. When my father-in-law retired, the board appointed me to run Turner Developments." Ethan looked away, ashamed, while Camilla stared at him, betrayed. "You let me believe you were the boss," she hissed. He only gave that same careless shrug that had haunted me for years. Camila had gambled everything on Ethan's supposed fortune, and she'd lost. Mia, amused, asked if they could stay in the condo. Before I could respond, Camila jumped in. It's company property, so it's free for Ethan, right? Mia shook her head, sliding over a lease agreement. It's rented to employees at market rates. Here's the figure. The number was brutal. Charlotte's luxury condos weren't cheap. Ethan's face fell. My salary won't even cover that, he muttered. Camila looked as if she'd been slapped. She had walked in expecting a mansion, and instead was staring at rent she couldn't afford. A strange mix of triumph and pity washed over me. Camila's scheme, latching onto Ethan for wealth, had collapsed. Ethan, who had always coasted through life, was left with nothing but his own apathy. For years, I had shouldered our expenses, my income covering everything while Ethan drifted. Now, with no savings to divide, the divorce settlement was swift and merciless. Camila's dream of opulence disintegrated, and Ethan was left to face reality. I walked out of that room lighter than I had in years, ready to leave both of them behind and focus on what mattered: my company, my people, my future. The fallout was almost poetic. Weeks later, word spread through the family that Camila's pregnancy had been a lie. She had fabricated it to trap Ethan, hoping his family's money would bail her out of her own debts. My mother-in-law, once thrilled at the thought of a grandchild, was devastated. My father-in-law, never fond of Camila, was furious. She's no daughter-in-law of mine, he growled when I visited. The atmosphere at their estate grew icy. Camila and Ethan, now living there, were pariahs. When Camila begged my father-in-law to cover her alimony payments, he cut her off cold. "You're nothing to this family," he said. Camila couldn't handle the humiliation. One morning, she packed up and vanished, leaving Ethan behind to drown in disappointment. She had entered thinking she'd secured a wealthy husband and a life of ease, but walked away with nothing but debts. Ethan, stripped of the company's support, eventually tried crawling back. One evening, he appeared at my new Midtown Charlotte apartment, a peaceful, minimalist space I'd made my own. "Claire, maybe we can try again," he said, his voice pleading. I laughed softly, not cruelly, but with exhaustion. "Ethan, you made your choices. You betrayed me with my stepsister. You abandoned our marriage long before that. I'm done." His father had already demoted him to a minor desk job, cutting him off from the empire he once thought would be his. The former heir to Turner Developments was now barely scraping by. I felt nothing but freedom. I poured myself into my work, the one place I felt whole. Leading Turner Developments wasn't just a job, it was my calling. Every project approved, every worker paid, felt like honoring my mother's sacrifices and the families who depended on us. Profits climbed, contracts flourished, and the board began calling me the backbone of the company. My father-in-law became my greatest ally, sharing wisdom over coffee, his pride quietly shining through. "You're doing what I always wished Ethan would," he told me once, his voice soft. That meant more than any title. As for love, I don't think about remarriage. My heart has weathered too much. Instead, I'm committed to my work, to the thousands of families who rely on us. I've learned my strength. I've learned what it means to stand tall after betrayal. Ethan and Camila are nothing more than distant memories, a hard lesson in trust and resilience. To those who followed my story, thank you. If you felt the sting of betrayal or the triumph of rebuilding, stay with me. Every building we raise, every contract we secure, is proof of grit, vision, and starting over. Keep forging your own path. I'll see you at the top.